Am I the asshole for threatening to leave my mother alone with my paralyzed stepfather? I'm a 22-year-old man, the youngest of 4 siblings, and have lived with my 62-year-old mother my entire life. My mother had me when she was in her 40s, which wasn't planned. My biological father, already in his late 50s, didn't want another child. He left us when I was just a baby, so my mother raised me on her own. Growing up, it was just me and her. My 3 older siblings, all much older than me, had already moved out, started families, and lived their own lives. They were never really around. Despite the challenges of being a single mother, my mom was incredibly devoted to me. She worked grueling 12-hour days just to provide for us. But even though she was always exhausted, she never failed to take care of me and make sure I had everything I needed. When I was 4 years old, my mother remarried. She married a man who would become my stepfather, but not really my father. He wasn't abusive or mean, just indifferent. He never tried to build a relationship with me. He kept to himself, was reserved, and didn't really socialize much with anyone, including me. While he did provide some financial support, it was minimal and only covered the essentials. All the day-to-day care and emotional support came from my mother. I was a good student and worked hard in school, partly because I wanted to make my mom proud and partly because I saw how hard she worked for me. I ended up graduating as the valedictorian of my class, and because of that I was able to land a well-paying job soon after. With my salary, I started giving my mom 50% of what I earned every month. It felt like the least I could do to thank her for all the sacrifices she had made for me. We were managing well, life was stable. But everything changed 2 months ago. My stepfather had a severe bike accident that left him paralyzed. It was devastating. He's unable to speak, move, or communicate in any meaningful way. We tried everything, multiple surgeries, physical therapy, different specialists, but nothing worked. The doctors eventually told us his condition was permanent. He would need around-the-clock care for the rest of his life. The news broke my mother. She poured every ounce of her energy and every cent she had into trying to make him better, but there was no improvement. Our household was thrown into complete disarray. My mother became consumed with his care, and her once joyful, albeit exhausted, demeanor was replaced with constant anxiety, sadness, and despair. She was determined to care for him at home, even though it was draining her physically and emotionally. After seeing how things were going, I suggested looking into placing my stepfather in a care facility. It wasn't a decision I made lightly, but I thought it was the best option given the circumstances. He could get professional care, and my mother wouldn't have to sacrifice her entire life. But when I brought it up, she was horrified. She said it was cruel and disrespectful to even think of doing that. To her, family always takes care of family, no matter the cost. 2 weeks ago, my mother sat me down and told me she had decided to quit her job to care for my stepfather full-time. She expected me to take over as the primary financial provider. While I already contributed half of my salary to the household, she now wanted me to cover all the expenses, including the massive medical bills that were piling up. She said I was young, earning a good income, and I could afford to support all 3 of us. But I couldn't. My salary, while good for someone my age, isn't enough to support 3 adults and pay for the level of care my stepfather needs. Not to mention, I have my own future to think about. I'm saving to build my life too. I tried explaining this to her. I told her that the numbers just didn't add up and that we couldn't sustain this lifestyle indefinitely. But she wouldn't hear it. She was adamant that we needed to stick together as a family. The argument escalated and I lost my temper. I said things I now regret. I told her that my stepfather had never been a real father to me, that he never made an effort to connect with me, and that I didn't owe him anything. I reminded her that, while she had sacrificed everything for me, he hadn't. Then I said something that broke her. I gave her an ultimatum. Either she agreed to put my stepfather in a care facility, or I would cut her off and leave. She burst into tears. She was devastated, and I had never seen her like that before. In all my life, I had never raised my voice at her, and I had never seen her cry because of something I said. But I stood my ground. I told her I couldn't support them both, and I couldn't sacrifice my own life for a man who had never been a father to me. After that conversation, I left. Since then, my siblings have been furious with me. They've been bombarding me with calls, texts, and social media posts, calling me cruel, selfish, and ungrateful. They've publicly shamed me, saying that I'm abandoning my mother in her time of need. The pressure is overwhelming. They say that, as the only son, it's my responsibility to take care of our mother and the household. But my sisters can't help financially because their husbands don't earn enough, leaving all the burden on me. Now I'm left wondering, am I the asshole for standing my ground? For wanting to prioritize my own future? Or am I really as selfish as everyone says? Like and subscribe for more daily Reddit stories.